Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
Tango Shalom is now available on all VOD
major platforms. I think we messed that up.
Video on demand, or as they say in the trade, VOD.
VOD.
Tango Shalom
is now available on all VOD platforms,
which means
video on demand.
Look how you know. You must be a high school graduate.
I'm a college graduate.
Really?
Yes.
I got an honorary degree from Hofstra. Did you get an honorary degree?
No, I got a degree.
Oh, well, I got honorary. You know, I'm in the Jewish Museum.
What for?
What do you mean? As a famous Jew in the Bronx. I'm in the famous...
I'm in the Prospect Park in the Stones.
How big is the stone?
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your evangelist of the imagination, and still, as yet undefined, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am, for the second to the last time in 2021, Rob casting at you, imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. And I bet all of you are going to be very happy to not see another Tango Shalom ad before the show. There's one more coming tomorrow. But then we're done. You know why? We're moving on. It's a new year, new projects, new stuff. The next thing I can talk about is, of course, the second season of Dota Dragon's Blood, which I'm already seeing compared to Arcane. People are deciding whether or not which one is better. Look, man, I think there's a place for both. As you all know, I was the editor of the first season of Dota Dragon's Blood. I was the editor on the second season, which drops... I heard it dropped the 6th. Ashley said it dropped the 18th. Very proud of the work that everyone's done on Dota Dragon's Blood. I think it's a really cool show. Season 2 gets presumably... Well, I know it gets bonkers. It goes places you might not expect. So if you like anime, you like sword and sorcery, you like medieval fantasy, and if you like dragons, there's a lot of fucking dragons in Dota Dragon's Blood. So check it out. Look for that. Catch up on the first season if you've never seen it before. But that is the next project that I was involved with that drops next month. Hopefully we will get a season 3, which would be exciting. And there's a lot of cool stuff coming up in the next year that I'm involved with. Tango Shalom represented a part of my life. It exceeded our expectations. I want to thank all of you who've supported that film, those of you who turned out into the theaters and gave us a far more successful theatrical run than I would have even imagined, even though, comparatively speaking, it was small. It's currently playing in the Ukraine. It still will be opening across Europe. It's opening in Israel. I think we just made a deal for Greece. I don't know, but Tango Shalom will be in Europe, so you can find it in theaters and places like that. And when the former Soviet Union, when Russia, the Confederacy of Independent States, comes out of lockdown, Tango Shalom will be playing all across Russia, which is exciting for me. So you know what else is exciting? Spider-Man. Yeah, I know. People are like, dude, Bob, when are you going to talk some Fett? When are you going to get on the Fett tip? Well, I will. I'm still collating, as Ash said in Alien. I'm still thinking about it. I've been reading and looking at a lot of differing points of view. I'll tell you flat out, I enjoyed Boba Fett, the book of Boba Fett. I did. I enjoyed It basically, the Book of Boba Fett, in a nutshell, the first episode sort of set the table for what I think is a new show. I think it needed to do some housekeeping before it could move forward. I like the fact that we learned how he got out of the Sarlacc pit, even though people say, well, Rob, in the legend, we already knew he got out of I know. I read the Marvel comics. He got out of the Sarlacc pit in the early 80s. I get it. But it was nice to see it canonized, or now it's canonical. I think this is great. And I enjoyed seeing what happened to his armor. I like seeing that Jawas stole his armor. Oh, wait, if you haven't seen it, never mind. Maybe I shouldn't get into spoilers. But I enjoyed it. So I enjoyed the first episode as an old school Star Trek fan and Star Wars fan, Star Wars fan. It was fun seeing the wreckage of Jabba's sail barge. And it was fun seeing Max Rebo show up again. Why not? I enjoyed it. I'm really curious to see where it goes. It's a 7-episode series. I saw this first episode as sort of an appetizer before the 6-episode Book of Boba Fett really begins. This is the preface. We just saw the preface. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the show. Now, let's get to the topic at hand. I think, obviously, the great success story as far as imagination connoisseurs go is the box office success of Spider-Man No Way Home. And there's going to be a lot of cynical people. I understand. Everyone knows I've been accused of being a Marvel shill or a Disney shill forever. And I keep saying, Marvel, Disney, I want to be your shill. I will bend over backwards to be your shill. I am not your shill. I don't get paid to do anything. And by the way, I would be happy to be paid in Hot Toys figures. I'm just saying that. I'm putting that out there. Yes, Hot Toys dropped the Golden Armor Wonder Woman today. Wow. I was talking to Justin Kane last night, and he said it was either going to be Ahsoka. I thought it was going to be Ahsoka. Or Golden Armor Wonder Woman. He knows more than I do. So there you go. Golden Armor Wonder Woman, which, by the way, as a Justice League fan and an Alex Ross fan, even though I really didn't like Wonder Woman 84, I am so going to bust on that Wonder Woman armor because it's the Kingdom Come armor. And who doesn't love Kingdom Come? But anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, yeah, I love the MCU. I love it. Do I love everything in the MCU equally? No, but I could probably watch Infinity War and Endgame every single day for the rest of my life because I find them so damn entertaining. Because I grew up with Marvel Comics. And to see them writ large on the big screen the way they are, come on, who doesn't love it? But Spider-Man No Way Home, I think, is a very, let's call it a very unique film in the annals of Hollywood history. And from a business standpoint, I'm very curious how it all came together. How did you go back and get Alfred Molina? How did you get Willem Dafoe? How did you get Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield? I mean, from a business standpoint, I've said often, I wish, who got the first call? Do you call Tobey Maguire himself? Does Kevin Feige get on the blower with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire and say, hey, yo, boys, do you make that, is it a conference call? Or do you call them individually? How do you do that? And then, of course, if you're Kevin Feige, immediately your people, your lawyers, your managers, your agents, they're thinking cha-ching, which makes deal-making hard because it's not like there's any other people. Mark Altman and I, we wrote a screenplay that was all about William Shatner. There was only one actor in the world that we could get, and we're trying to make a low-budget indie film, and he had us over a barrel. It's not like we could say, we're going to replace you with someone else. You couldn't do that. But with, so Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, all they could do, and by the way, talk about collective bargaining. Who do you think got on the phone with each other after that call was made? I mean, Tobey and Andrew were like, so how much money do we want? Because they had to conspire together because you couldn't just get one of them. I mean, in terms of deal making, and by the way, we'll never know. We'll never know. But there was an article in the Hollywood Reporter yesterday that talks a little bit about what happened, the methodology once these wheels were in motion, which I want to talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to bring everybody up to date, first of all, on where Spider-Man No Way Home is. First of all, it's the most successful movie in Sony Columbia history. It's made more money than any of their movies ever. It has surpassed Spider-Man Far From Home. And Anthony D'Alessandro today, this morning, Thursday update, Wednesday box office numbers. In its 13th day of release, Sony Marvel's Spider-Man No Way Home counts $536.6 million at the domestic box office. That's here in the U.S. $536.6 million domestic, making it the number 12 highest grossing movie in US and Canada of all time. And it's not nearly done. Spider-Man No Way Home swings past Disney's 2016 Christmas hit Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, which topped out domestically at $532.1 million, and Warner Brothers' top-grossing stateside title of all time, The Dark Knight, at $534.8 million on the all-time box office domestic list, which means, of course, Spider-Man is officially more popular than Batman. I know, adjusted for inflation, whatever, but that wouldn't be so dramatic. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about numbers now. I want immediate gratification, and so do you. The Tom Holland, Zendaya, Benedict Cumberbatch ensemble movie will soon overtake Disney's 2019 reboot of The Lion King at $543.6 million, number 11, with Disney Pixar's Incredibles 2 at $608.5 million, also in its sights. Sony reports that No Way Home's 13-day gross is the third highest of all time, behind Avengers, with a domestic cum of $652.9 million, and Star Wars The Force Awakens at $629 million. That's in 13-day gross. The sequel collected $20.2 million on Wednesday from 4,336 theaters, down 5% from Tuesday, the third best second Wednesday of all time. When does this movie slow down? Even though kids will remain out of school at the start of 2022, we've seen these big Christmas movies like Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rogue One dip below $10 million in their weekday grosses sometime after January 1st, with New Year's Day on Saturday. That's likely Monday, January 3rd for Spider-Man No Way Home. Still, robust fourth weekends in the new year are in store. Rogue One posted $22 million in the weekend following New Year's Day. Star Wars The Last Jedi earned $23.7 million, and The Force Awakens an awesome $42.3 million. Needless to say, the movie's a hit. And now, you know, the multiverse is all the rage. I'm sure Warner Brothers is looking at the fact that they have both Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck in The Flash, thinking, look at us, man. We were riding that wave of the multiverse. Well, Warner Brothers, you know, slow your roll. I love Michael Keaton. I love the fact that we're going to see Batman and The Flash. It's Flashpoint. You can show us anybody. Thomas Wayne. You can show us dead people. Who knows, a CG Christopher Reeve. I wouldn't put it past him. I hope they don't do that, but I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, they're talking about putting James Dean in a movie. Why not Christopher Reeve? Please don't do that. That's a bad idea. Don't do it. But, I mean, who else can show up in that movie? You never know. Superboy? Which one? Could be many. I mean, hell, you could bring back the old Shazams if you wanted to. We can't bring back Almighty Isis. Unfortunately. Rest in peace. Still, you're not going to surpass Spider-Man. I don't care who you put in your movie. This was a singular occurrence, and I'm sure every single person, I'm sure Alex Kurtzman's like, oh my God, what if we took all the surviving members of Star Trek and put them in a movie together? Let's get everybody. Believe me, kids, it's coming. They'll do some anniversary episode, and everybody's going to show up. It's not going to be good, but everyone's going to show up because, hey, Paramount Plus, before it gets sold off to somebody else, they're going to try and goose that golden egg, or golden goose the egg, whatever, goose something. And it's going to happen. We're going to see multiverse upon multiverse upon multiverse. And you know what? None of them are going to work as well. Why? Because no one ever became successful following a trend in Hollywood. You become successful setting trends in Hollywood. And it's kind of interesting that over on the CW, they've been doing that multiverse thing for a long time. We're all about that multiverse life over at the CW. And Marvel took a page. Let's face it. The Marvel multiverse followed up, even in the comics, followed up DC. The Flash Two Worlds, that business happened a long time ago. I don't want to get in the weeds, but I do think that what was done with this movie was pretty extraordinary. And I'm interested in it from a deal-making standpoint. Like, how did they do it? How did they do this? How'd Marvel pull it off? And there was an article, Aaron Couch in Hollywood Reporter, yesterday interviewed the screenwriters. And it was an article called How Spider-Man No Way Home Was Shaped by Its Secrets. And I found this fascinating. Now, I'm coming at this from a business standpoint, the business of Hollywood. And I see this, you know, for all of the vitriol that we find online, especially in fan circles who, you know, we don't always get what we want. But if you try sometime, you just might find you get what you need. And apparently, Spider-Man No Way Home is exactly what we all needed. I brought a lot of cheer, put a smile on my face. I teared up, might have shed a couple of tears twice in the movie. And anyway, I still want to know about the deal making, and no one's ever going to tell us what money was really involved. You don't learn about those things. They keep them secret. Is it secret? Is it safe? Yes. Money is always secret and safe until it's not. Until Disney decides to roll on Scarlett Johansson and reveal how much they pay her. Boy, that wasn't cool. Anyway, so this article, How Spider-Man No Way Home Was Shaped by Its Secret Stars. Now, this is very interesting. So Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, they're interviewed here, and I want to go through this article because it has some really interesting bits. The duo weaved together a script that combined 3 generations of Spider-Man films with their ideas, along with the behind-the-scenes negotiating from executives, helping convince retired Spidey actors Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to suit up as Peter Parker once again. By December 2020, Maguire and Garfield were both secretly signed onto the project but had yet to receive any script pages. The pressure was on, I'll bet, because they probably had to pay them millions and millions of dollars. The pressure was on as the production was hurtling toward filming the actors' critical third-act scenes that saw them team up with Tom Holland's Peter Parker, who inadvertently causes Doctor Strange to open up a rift in the multiverse, leading to the villains and Spider-Man to pour through. Now, this is the interesting part that I really found fascinating. McKenna and Summers hunkered down before Christmas to get the pages to Maguire and Garfield. The writers were relieved to find that the actors not only liked what they read, but were also enthusiastic partners in developing their characters further. They had thoughts. And a lot of the time, a screenwriter will tell you when an actor has thoughts, you wind up with Star Trek Picard. Oh, wait, sorry. They had thoughts. And it was interesting and helpful to see their thoughts, Summers tells The Hollywood Reporter. No one knows the character as well as or gives as much thought to the character as someone who then has to embody it and sell it. It definitely shaped what we did. I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's true, but okay, I'll go with it. Maguire, who played Spider-Man in 3 films from 2002 to 2007. Now, this I find very interesting. Maguire wanted to keep things quite minimal when it came to revelations about his character post-Spider-Man 3. Now, I just want to editorialize right here. Why do you think that is? I think the reason that is the case, and I have nothing other than intuition and a longtime industry student, as I am. I would say the reason he wanted to keep it vague was I wouldn't be surprised if Tobey Maguire is going to do another Spider-Man movie for Sony. Not necessarily in the MCU, but they don't have to do it in the MCU because they have now canonically said that those 2 Spider-Men exist in alternate universes. So what they've been given the right to do, I would imagine, is you can make Spider-Man 4 over at Sony, and no one's going to confuse the 2 because the MCU Spider-Man films always have subtitles. Homecoming, No Way Home, Far From Home. So I think one of the deal points that Tobey Maguire would make, if I were Tobey Maguire, and I'm not saying that he did, but he would be a fool not to say, I'll tell you what, perfectly willing to come back to play Spider-Man. You've shown what an older Peter Parker might be like in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Maybe that was me. Maybe not. Maybe I'm in your Venom-verse. Because we've seen that Venom is not in the MCU either. Morbius, not in the MCU. I mean, I am sure we have now a symbiote in the MCU because we've seen bits of Venom exist in the MCU. And we've already seen Venom in Tobey Maguire's version. But it wouldn't surprise me if part of Tobey Maguire's deal that he carved out was the possibility that he will get a Spider-Man 4 out of it. Because why wouldn't you? You tell the studio, yo, man, I won't soak you now. You know, you don't have to pay me $25 million to come back and play Spider-Man in No Way Home. Pay me $5 million, but I want a deal that says we're making Spider-Man 4 based on what you showed me in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, keep in mind, everyone, before everyone goes running to tweet and say, well, Rob Burnett said that Tobey Maguire signed on for Spider-Man 4. Let me be clear. No fucking clue if he did or not. I'm just saying from a deal-making standpoint, it makes sense. And by Tobey Maguire saying, yo, writers, let's not address what happened after Spider-Man 3. The fact that he said that leads me to believe that there is a possibility. I could be spitting into the wind here. I don't know. But if I was Tobey Maguire's manager and agent, it's not exactly like his career is going gangbusters right now. And if they're going to admit a multiverse exists, and Spider-Man Far From Home made over $1 billion outgrossing Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies, why wouldn't Tobey Maguire say it? I'll tell you one thing. I would love to see a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. I think he's 46 now. What does Spider-Man do at 46? I want to see that story. Why not tell us that story? I think audiences would tune out or tune in for it. Why not? So that was an interesting takeaway I came from here. Andrew Garfield, now I'm back to this article, who starred in 2 amazing Spider-Man films from 2012 to 14, embraced exploring the dark path his Peter Parker went down after the death of Gwen Stacy in Spider-Man 2. I thought that was incredibly fascinating, that after the death of Gwen Stacy, Spider-Man went down a dark path. Who doesn't want to see that movie? You know, my favorite movie of the year so far is still Tick, Tick, Boom. I thought Andrew Garfield slayed in that role. I thought he was incredible. I love that film. I probably could watch it on an endless loop with Bob Fosse's All That Jazz for the rest of my life, because they're basically about the creative impulse and what does it mean to be a creator and to conjure something out of thin air or whatever. Fascinating. All That Jazz is one of my favorite movies. Tick, Tick, Boom falls along the same lines. And Andrew Garfield was spectacular in it. Who wouldn't want to see a dark Spider-Man film? Spider-Man going down and maybe he has to be rescued, bring somebody from the multiverse. I don't know. But what they've done with Spider-Man No Way Home is validate multiple Spider-Man sequels with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Who wouldn't turn out for those? Not tune out. I don't say we're going to tune out. But who wouldn't want to do those? I mean, I would absolutely go see a mid-40s Spider-Man movie. You know, where's Spider-Man at now? Especially because maybe he's the only superhero in his universe. Could be. Don't know. And the idea, Andrew Garfield also says he latched on to the notion that his version of Peter was the middle brother. They had great ideas. These are the writers now. McKenna says, they had great ideas that really elevated everything we were going for and added layers and an arc. And we really actually started honing into the idea that these two guys were really helping Tom's Peter on his journey to becoming who he ends up becoming, says McKenna. There's a crucial moral moment that they help him get through in the climax of the movie. So much of that was brought by Tobey and Andrew's ideas and shaping what they thought their characters could bring to this story. Now, I don't think I can impart to all of you how important it is that you have great collaborators when you make projects. You know, you can't allow an actor to have enough leverage where he's going to now define, based on what an actor wants a character to be, because the problem there is that usually the actors want to instill more of themselves as real people into what they're doing, as opposed to doing what's best for the character they play. That's why it has to be, if you're going to allow an actor input, it has to be a collaboration between the actors and the filmmakers. But the filmmakers and the storytellers should, I think, always be given the deferential opinion. Actors can give input, and the thing is, Tobey and Andrew probably paid very well, but the fact you want them to give input, you want them to be happy with what they're doing, and I think that's why the movie came out the way it did. McKenna and Summers, who also wrote Homecoming and Far From Home, dive into spoilers with the Hollywood Reporter, addressing the Aunt May shocker, what it means for Uncle Ben in the MCU, and the meaning behind that haunting ending. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. I won't read the whole article, but I want to read some of this. So here's the Hollywood Reporter saying, it wasn't always clear this would be a multiverse movie or even that it would be set in the MCU due to a brief breakup between Sony and Marvel in 2019. Tom Holland has said a Kraven the Hunter pitch was among the possibilities. How many iterations were you involved with before landing on the multiverse? Chris McKenna says, I feel like there's always a Kraven the Hunter pitch, laughs. Even on movies that aren't Marvel movies, we're like, well, what if Kraven the Hunter showed up? Eric Summers says, we were pitching a romantic comedy, and we were like, what if the Kraven the Hunter shows up? McKenna says, once Sony and Marvel hammered everything out, we were like, okay, we've got the team back together. What are we doing now with this giant reveal in Far From Home in which Peter Parker's identity is made public? We started playing around with what different ways that fallout could affect our character. The idea of It's a Wonderful Life. What if somehow he made a wish? Well, then you have Wonder Woman 84. I guess it would have to be Doctor Strange. Is there a way to put the genie back in the bottle? That opened up a few different story avenues we started exploring. I think if there were certain people who were like, oh, it'd be really fun if eventually we could tease these characters from the past movies. And then I think it was just one of our chief gods of our universe saying, well, what if that's just the act break? What if that's the end of Act 1? Stop hoping for a tag that teases it. What if we just did it? We're like, oh, okay. And the Hollywood Reporter asks, if you had a wish list of previous actors you wanted as you were writing, how does that affect your script? Do you write and go, okay, we're going to have a scene in Doctor Strange's basement. We just don't know who's in it yet. McKenna says, all you can do is act like we're getting everybody that we want and let the powers that be reach out to those people and see if this can actually become a reality. But let's start working as if we have this wish list fulfilled. We have to generate an outline and script pages and all of that. Then we started hearing back, oh, certain people are interested. They didn't hang up the phone. They're into it. Well, that's the story I want to hear. Who made those calls? How did those calls go? Can we have transcripts of those calls? My God, I can't even imagine what those calls were like. And so it was this crazy thing that we kept on writing towards. Summers goes on to say, once it was collectively decided that we were going to take this swing, we had to commit and we had to do what was right for the story. If we felt this is where this person should come in, this is how they would have an influence on this story and on Peter's journey, this would be the right place. Let's write it to have this person. If it doesn't work out, then obviously we'll scramble. A lot of times when you have creative constraint put on things, it ends up leading to some creative workarounds and decisions. We had to plan optimistically, and it worked out. None of the previous Spider-Man actors had to come back. How did you lure them? Are you showing them pages? Are you pitching them outlines? McKenna says, the producers and John got on with them, and we were telling them the basic idea. I think people like Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe, they just seem like their game. Summers says, yeah. McKenna says, at a certain point, you have to show pages. You have to live up to the concept. Getting two people there that were so crucial to Act 3 of the movie, they had to make sure it was the right thing for them. They're coming in, it brings so much baggage to it. Their own baggage. Baggage of those series. They just had to be sure that it wasn't just a curtain call, that it actually was continuing their stories in a way that was meaningful to them too, and was honoring everything that they had done and taking it a step further. Getting all the feedback from the actors was so crucial on every role. Hearing, oh, Willem Dafoe wants to take a walk with you and talk about his character. I'm like, holy shit, okay. That sounds like quite a walk, says the Hollywood Reporter. McKenna says, that was amazing. Then, knowing that we had to get pages to Toby and Andrew, at a certain point, we had to get them Act 3. We had to get those pages to them literally a year ago. We were holed up getting pages to them before Christmas of last year. And Summers says, yeah, we were really holed up. McKenna says, we have to get these pages to them. It was so great. They were on board, but they hadn't seen anything. They knew the idea. They trusted everyone. But we were in the middle of the war making the movie, changing so much, but also we were heading towards shooting them, so they had to see the pages and basically see, okay, we know there's been a pandemic. We know this thing has gone through a million changes. We know it's been really difficult. Luckily, they read the pages and they were like, oh, yes, we can work with this. McKenna laughs. Summers said they had thoughts, and it was really interesting and helpful to see their thoughts. No one knows the character as well or gives as much thought to the character as someone who has then have to embody it and sell it. It's always valuable to hear what the actor is thinking. It definitely shaped what we did. McKenna says, they had great ideas that really elevated everything we were going for and added layers and an arc. And we actually started honing into the idea that these two guys were really helping Tom's Peter on his journey to becoming who he ends up becoming. There's a crucial moral moment that they helped him get through in the climax of the movie, and so much of that was brought by Toby and Andrew's ideas of shaping what they thought their characters could bring to the story. Hollywood Reporter says, you get to continue Sam Raimi and Mark Webb's movies with small lines here and there. We learn that Toby's Peter is still with MJ. We learn that Andrew is in a dark patch and stopped pulling his punches after the death of Gwen. How much of a debate was that, figuring out what to reveal? McKenna says, we were like, we've got to make them each very specific. As writers, we kept saying, where are these characters in their lives when they come into the movie? Where is Toby? We're not de-agifying him. He's a guy who's 43 who is entering this movie, and Andrew Garfield, where are they in their lives? The last time you saw Andrew Garfield, it was the death of Gwen, and that must have sent him down a dark spiral. Maybe he never got out of. We don't know because there wasn't a third movie that we saw. Where did he go? Maybe a really dark place. We wanted to be true to the characters in those movies, really having conversations about specifying where they are without giving away too much. Not coming in, spilling all the beans. Toby's Peter is running Peter Parker Industries. You just wanted to have little hints of that without being all of this exposition and fan service. Hollywood Reporter says, did Toby and Andrew give input on that? Toby wanted to be very minimal about how much you know. Very, very minimal. I wonder why. Andrew really loved the idea of he's still tortured over what happened in Amazing Spider-Man 2 and where that left him and how they could bring that to Tom. We can empathize with you. We do know what you're going through. If anyone in the world knows what you're going through, it's us. But also, we can be beacons. Toby especially has come through that darkness. We thought it was cool that Andrew's Peter was still in the midst of that darkness. They weren't just here to go, two awesome Jedi Knight heroes who show up and are going to help take down the bad guys. They're going through their own things. And we were trying to write up the characters that did such a great job of creating. They did such a great job of creating and really being true to those characters and those stories and those worlds so that it didn't feel like we were doing a curtain call and fan service. Hollywood Reporter says, I get the sense that Andrew's Peter is in a better place at the end of this movie. The look Andrew gives after saving MJ is one of my favorites. McKenna says, so moving. I loved MJ's, are you okay? Summers laughs. McKenna says, I think the last third of the movie is my favorite part of the whole movie. You get to that point and you're like, we could have really dropped the ball and it would have been our fault because these guys were game. They showed up and we reworked all those scenes when they came on with the actors, the producers, and the director. We reworked the rooftop school scene and all that stuff, and there was so much fun improv of those guys. Andrew really leaned into the lonely middle brother. That's one of the things we started saying. He's the middle brother. You have the elder brother, Toby, who is the wise one. The middle sibling thing, he feels like he's not getting the attention of the other two. It works so great for that character. Andrew leaned into middle brother syndrome. The baby one is getting all the attention. What about me? He's obviously hurting. I think he has so many great flourishes. So does Toby. I think that dynamic of brothers, that's why it's so great when Andrew says, God, I always wanted to have brothers. While simplistic, it's a great paradigm for the three of them coming together, and you want to feel like, oh, it's not just doppelgangers, they're different. They're not the same person. They're born of the same experience and the same spider bite. They're like brothers. No one knows the heaven and hell of what it's to be like in an experience quite like your sibling. No one knows what this family is like. At least they got a sense of you're not alone. There's a community. You guys have each suffered in your own way. And then you get to help heal each other. It was a wonderful part of getting there. I'm going to put this article now into the live chat. Here it is. And I would encourage everyone to read it because it goes on and talks about a lot of really interesting stuff. Now, I would say the big takeaway from all of this is that this is why the Marvel Cinematic Universe continues to be relevant and incredibly successful. Yes, I do know that these films, the Spider-Man movies, are released by Sony, But the MCU has got 25% ownership in these movies, and let's face it, the genius of Kevin Feige, combined with Amy Pascal's stewardship over this franchise, is what made it happen. Amy Pascal famously threw a sandwich at Kevin Feige when he suggested doing these kinds of things. So, not to take away from anybody's success, everybody had a part to play here. But what I think that's really interesting about Spider-Man No Way Home is the synergy, once again, led by Kevin Feige, Victoria Alonso, Louis D'Esposito, Louis D'Esposito, their stewardship and Kenan Summers and the actors, there's a synergy because as I think it was, I don't know if it was Tobey Maguire, I don't know who said this, but I recently read that what was different about dealing with Kevin Feige is he's both the producer and the studio. So you have a visionary in Kevin Feige who worked his way up. Remember, I've said it a million times before, but he worked on 13 Marvel movies before the MCU existed. He worked for Richard Donner. He learned on the job. He knows what's up. He probably knows more about producing franchise film properties than anyone else in the history of Hollywood. And that's been bared out by his success. And I think that it shows that you really need people who understand the very things that they're working on. Look, anybody wants to work in a big franchise property. And like when you work in television, you've worked with people before, it doesn't matter whether you're working on whatever it is, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the Marvel Cinematic Universe proves that when you have leadership and you have creators that are working synergistically for the good of the property itself, who really know and understand the very things that they're working on, you wind up with the most successful film in Sony history. That's the real lesson, I think, of Spider-Man No Way Home. Sure, can you be cynical about it and say, hey, man, you had to have the 27th Marvel movie or the what was it, the 8th Spider-Man movie? Sure, you had all the groundwork that was laid. Not a lot of other things have that kind of groundwork. But still, it was the synergy of everybody who really know what they're doing. And it's hard to say that in Hollywood, in a realm where no one knows anything. Well, there are people that do know things. They're just usually thwarted by the people that don't. In the case of the MCU, everyone who's working there knows what's up. And that's why Spider-Man No Way Home is the success that it is. And I find it to be quite, quite makes me just feel good. I mean, movies are supposed to be entertaining. They're entertainment. That's what they are. And when you're seeing a comic book movie or a Star Wars movie or a Star Trek movie or pick your franchise, Die Hard, they're supposed to put a smile on your face and make you feel something. And when they do that, you also make the most money. So, all good. Let's see. Chris Kane writes in. Chris Kane sent in a letter. Hi, Rob. Happy holidays. I just found out something pretty surprising, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. At a Christmas gathering, my 15-year-old daughter and her cousins were in another room discussing movies. Well, first of all, kudos to your 15-year-old daughter for discussing movies, because there is hope for youth. That they weren't discussing TikTok, they weren't discussing anything else. They were discussing movies. I love to hear that. She came into the kitchen to ask me a question or two and mentioned that they had been looking at the IMDb top 250 movies. As she left to join the kids again, she said, Jaws isn't even on the list. I smiled arrogantly and said, I'm sure it's on the list. She left, and I didn't think much of it. Later that evening, I remembered the conversation, so I thought I'd check to see where Jaws places on the list. As I scrolled through the entries, I started to feel a mixture of embarrassment and a bit of shock. There's Ford v Ferrari, Gone Girl, Hachi a Dog's Tale, but no Jaws. To be clear, I understand the list doesn't say the top 250 best movies of all time, and that most hardcore movie fans take the rankings like this with a grain of salt. But I think most people would understand this list to represent the most beloved films of IMDb readers. All due respect to the films I listed above, but I would guess that even the casts and crews of those films would rank them below Jaws. Most of the great films you would expect are on there, including The Godfather Parts 1 and 2, Schindler's List, the Lord of the Rings films, Casablanca, etc. But no Jaws. And no Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Lost in Translation, The Social Network, and cinema's arguably most celebrated musical, The Sound of Music. I realize the IMDb is just sticking to whatever voting method they use, and this is the result. But it seems to me that whatever is used might need to be tweaked or changed. Thanks for reading this, and keep up the good work in 2022. Chris, my man. First of all, I think it's really important to understand that pop culture, and I've said this on the show before, is a product of the time in which it comes out. And very little of pop culture, I give pop culture 20 years. That's the half-life of pop culture is 20 years. It endures for 20 years, and then after that it begins to precipitously fall away in terms of its meaning. And, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, look at where the world is now compared to where the world was in 1975, which is 46 years ago, soon to be 47 years ago. Jaws is 47 years old. Now, anybody who came of age, if you go up to 1995, for 20 years, obviously, and also Jaws was riding the first wave of home video. It was one of the first movies MCA Home Entertainment released. One of the very first laser discs put out on MCA DiscoVision in the late 70s. That's right. There were laser discs in the late 70s, was Jaws. Jaws was a staple of cable and home video for the dawn of the home video age, from the late 70s all the way up to 1995. Everybody watched Jaws. But even 1995 was 26 years ago. Jaws is old. Jaws is great. You'll talk to many filmmakers and they'll tell you Jaws is one of their favorite movies, if not the favorite movie. I think Jaws still works today as well as it ever did. It's a rousing adventure. It's very funny because it hasn't dated that much because it takes place on Amity Island. Amity means friendship. It's a movie that doesn't need cell phones and modern technology because modern technology is not going to help you go out and, I mean, it might, but it's not going to help you go out and capture this shark. I mean, I guess it would. Matt Hooper's sonar and all of that. But it's a product of its time. I mean, if you think about it, even movies like Back to the Future, which came out 10 years after Jaws did in 1985, Back to the Future is a beloved film, but even that film is 36 years old. And, you know, it makes sense that movies that are in the public consciousness now, when people are going and voting on the IMDb, some movies, I mean, I think there are movies like, because we have things like The Sopranos, the idea of mafia movies, they've stayed in the public consciousness longer. Sopranos, I mean, obviously Many Saints of Newark, people go back and watch The Godfather again and again. And the thing about, I think now too, is when younger audiences watch Jaws, well, maybe the shark doesn't work for them as well as it perhaps should after you've seen Deep Blue Sea or Meg or anything like that. But movies are a product of their time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But remember, every generation wants to claim something as their own. And, I mean, heck, even The Matrix is 22 years old. And I think that's, you know, Jaws is a fantastic film. It'll never be, I don't think it'll ever be surpassed in the way it was done. But it's definitely a product of its time. And not to take away from the film at all, because I think it's one of the best movies ever made. And a movie about three disparate individuals that go out to try and save everybody from an evil monster. It has a classic, timeless tale to tell. But, you know, if you're 15, that means you were born in 2006. So, I mean, when you've already seen Jurassic Park from the same director, does Jaws have the same resonance? I don't know. But it doesn't take away from the movie itself. I just want to hand it to you for having a daughter that's looking at 15, looking at the IMDb top 250 movies. So clearly, the real victory here, Chris, is yours because you've raised a fine child. So kudos to you, sir. Kudos to you. Well done. Let's see. What else do we have? Who else? Who's up next? This one comes from Christopher McCulloch, who I haven't heard from in a while. Obviously, a longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity. Mr. Burnett. Christopher McCulloch. This is Christopher McCulloch. Mr. Burnett. As this year comes to a close, we now arrive at that time when Disney Plus offers up another prize turkey to the humbugs known as Star Wars fans. Much like with The Mandalorian, I've gone a little out of my way to avoid getting run over by the hype train, but I've seen things that perturb me. Or perhaps it was that potato I ate. This will be a dangerous time for Star Wars, one tricky to navigate. Opinions on the sequels will vary, but most will agree they didn't galvanize the fan base for the Star Wars to come. So how to rehabilitate both Star Wars and the fan base? The quick and easy path. The one I've seen Lucasfilm taking since Ahsoka and Luke's abrupt appearance is nostalgia. The ghosts of Star Wars past will remind even the most cynical among us the reason for the season. But relying on it too much is damaging to the coherence of your universe. Nostalgia is rewarded, but its returns diminish quickly as the stories crafted to suit it become thinner. Making shows based on Boba Fett and Obi-Wan are part of this tact. They're comfortable places to go for people who are searching for a reason to still enjoy Star Wars, but as we've already seen, their desperation to jumpstart nostalgia has hamstrung the stories of characters whose stories we've never seen before. I'm looking forward to Obi-Wan. I'm interested in Ahsoka's adventures with Thrawn, but a part of me will always be asking myself, why is this character still around? Or even alive? It's not because it makes sense in universe or for the story, it's because they're popular. And familiarity breeds contempt. An over-reliance on nostalgia is hardly uncommon, and its entropic force on the story might never become apparent if we're given new stories to move on with. Boba Fett's existence might be completely contrived, but his story could still be interesting. It's another thing, or perhaps the absence of it, that might have the more troubling ramifications for this era of Star Wars. Never will you find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. The economy of Star Wars script gives every line a certain weight. The segment of Star Wars that begins with this line is one of the most important. It is our glimpse of the decadence that underpins this universe, something that added depth to the universe. I'm talking about sleaze. The underworld is a place of vice and excess. Its inhabitants live in ignorance and want, cynical and cruel. From the cantina to Jabba's palace, it's no surprise that this is where so much of the EU, the extended universe, sprung. When I say that Star Wars is Flash Gordon meets Heavy Metal magazine, this is Star Wars at its most heavy metal. The universe is infinite. The stories that can be told are the same, and thanks to Mos Eisley, they can be weird. So how weird will Boba Fett's show be? How sleazy? The show itself doesn't look bad. It's more what I haven't seen yet that has me worried. There seems to have been a long campaign to sanitize the Star Wars universe. From Han's famous encounter to downplaying its references to slavery, including Leia's predicament in Jedi, or possibly even the word slave. While all of this is present in Star Wars, it isn't explicit. Like all the best children's entertainment, heavy adult themes are present, but treated with something in short supply: subtlety and restraint. A scene of Jabba forcing a woman in chains to dance for him before feeding them to his pit bull could range from Looney Tunes to Django Unchained, depending on how you treat it. But so much is being communicated by it. Things that make Star Wars a brutal and sanguine place, a place of peril and adventure. Now we look to the future. Boba Fett will be an interesting weather vane for the Star Wars yet to come. Back in Empire and Jedi, Fett was a man of few words, most of them about getting paid. He had a mercenary outlook and cunning enough to outplay Han Solo. He and the other bounty hunters were another glimpse at the seedy, weird underbelly of this universe. If you were going to write a story around this character, it would be about a villain. And while following the exploits of an intergalactic bounty hunter would be terribly interesting, I can appreciate the effort to make him an anti-hero, especially now some random bounty hunter is actually the unmodified clone of an ex-Mandalorian mercenary working for a Sith Lord to provide the template for all the clones of the Clone Wars and whatever else he got up to in his animated adventures. But if Boba Fett's impact on the underworld is spurred on by little more than the mouse needing a bagman to clean up a potential children's park, I'll have taken the measure of Disney's commitment to Star Wars verisimilitude. I'll be looking out for a few things: sex, violence, drugs, and heavy metal. We'll see if they remain a part of the universe or if they're antagonists to more than just the heroes of Star Wars, but its makers too. But never mind this old humbug, Christopher, practically Dickensian. Well, Christopher McCulloch always writes great articles or great letters, and this is another one of them. I think you bring up a lot of great points. The sanitization of Star Wars, the Star Wars universe, is very odd to me. This idea that the concept of slavery seems to only mean one thing, especially in the United States, and that is the slavery of black Africans brought to this country during the 14th century. Was that the first 15th century? 1600? No, it's 14, 15? A long time. 400 years ago. And of course, there has been slavery throughout human existence. There's slavery now. The idea of sentient beings taking other sentient beings into servitude has been part of human existence since we came out of the trees. And as we saw in the Star Wars universe, while they weren't slamming that point home, there is slavery in the Star Wars universe, and it ain't pretty. And I think you're bringing up a really good point. By turning Boba Fett into a hero, even he says, I plan to rule with respect rather than through fear. Why is Boba Fett wanting to rule at all? I mean, unless he just wants to get rich. And I'm surprised there's been a lot of divisive commentary about the first episode of Boba Fett. Look, I'll be honest. I was very disappointed in Robert Rodriguez's direction of that first episode. Where was the verve of Desperado or even El Mariachi? And I understand it's not an easy thing to shoot that show because they're not on location where you can put the camera in any direction. You're only given, it's hard. But I thought, look, to be honest, as much as I did enjoy the first episode of Boba Fett, I thought the action scenes were pretty lackluster. I thought the choreography was kind of bland. And it wasn't exactly, even Robert Rodriguez's episodes of The Mandalorian, I thought had a little bit more verve and wit when it came to the action scenes. I'm curious to see where it's going to go. But with, like you, will Boba Fett give us another sanitized version so they're making it acceptable for all ages? I think that's a mistake. I think, look, one thing Star Wars was when it first came out, it was cool. I mean, the fact is, when Ben Kenobi wanted to get up and rock and roll in Mos Eisley in that bar, he cut a dude's hand off who threatened him, his arm off. Obi-Wan Kenobi would straight up kill an opponent in a bar if that's what he thought he needed to do. And he did. Now, yeah, it was for everyone, but now we live in a world where people are worried that Boba Fett's ship is called the Slave One because Boba Fett's going to be a hero now. Ridiculous. Now it's the Fire Spray or whatever. I mean, it wasn't the class of the ship. It's the Slave One. And that's because Boba Fett is not beyond selling people into slavery. Probably. I think you're right, Christopher. I think we're going to see where Star Wars goes, and maybe it's not going to be any place great. But I hope it is. I mean, I really would like to see it be great. We'll see. But if Boba Fett's, if he gets turned into a chump, a jobber, as John Campea told me, I hope that's not what happens. But we'll see. This next one comes from our friend Dean Mikitich out in the UK. Hi, Rob and the PGS. It's been a while since I last wrote in, but I thought it was time to correct that error. Just mere days before The Matrix Resurrections came out, I started to see a lot of hate for the films. Lots of claims it was a flop, etc. I kept away from all these and spoilers, but YouTube and even Facebook kept bombarding me with these stories. I did not want to go with a negative impression from these stories. I wanted to go in without a clue of what I was about to see, just like I did when I saw the original back in 1999. At the time, I'd read one article on the film, and that was in the British published sci-fi mag SFX. Even that didn't give you a real idea of what the film was about. On opening day, I went with the lovely Emma Bannon, and I saw it in IMAX at the Cineworld Empire Cinema in Leicester Square. All right. I have to say, I loved every minute of the film, and I got to go and see it again. I really liked it too, to be honest. By the way, I want to interrupt this. Mikey Lito, who's been a member of this channel, jumps in and says, my problem with the Book of Boba Fett is that it's inaccessible to new viewers. Regardless, Happy New Year to you, your family, and to all the PGS. Well, Mikey, one of the great joys of 2021 was getting to know you better, sir. And we will stand on our island and we'll watch Tick, Tick, Boom from now until the end of time, knowing it's one of the best movies, if not the best movie, of the year. Anyway, on opening day, back to Dean Mikitich. On opening day, I went with the lovely Emma Bannon and saw it in IMAX. I can see why the film is so divisive now with those that have actually seen it. There is no doubt that Resurrections will not have the same impact The Matrix did when it came out. It did not have the mind-blowing effects such as bullet time. Hell, it even lacked action for most of the film. I have also noticed that the majority of people that did not like Resurrections are the same people that did not like Reloaded and Revolutions when they came out. Why is that? Personally, I think it's because they're expecting more of the same that came from The Matrix, a fast-paced, action-packed story with mind-blowing visuals. Unlike other sequels, like the Die Hard sequels, each of the Matrix films are very different from each other, while at the same time progressing the story along. In this respect, it's more like A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. Both of them are much beloved films, but very different from each other, and yet continuing the story. So, why the dislike for the Matrix sequels, and more specifically Resurrections? I think it's because people see them as sci-fi action films, which the sequels don't deliver on in the same manner as the original. But that's not what is at the heart of the Matrix films. They are philosophical films questioning our perception of reality. I guess people are just missing what the films are trying to say, as it is not take your brain out and watch, but films that make you think. Is Matrix Resurrection a flop? Well, that's a tough question to answer. It opens 3 days before Christmas. Most people will be getting their last bits and pieces for the holidays. To top it off, it's not a kid-friendly film, so those with young families are not going to take them to this, especially when Spidey opened a week earlier and everyone is saying it's the best MCU film since Endgame. There are also other family-friendly films that have come out, such as Sing 2. But the biggest issue Resurrections has is the simultaneous release in the U.S. on HBO Max. That would have stopped some people going to see it on the big screen and with its streaming. Well, we all know it would have ripped off Max and been we all know it would have been ripped off Max and put on torrent sites within hours of its release. This would also cut into the number of people that would have paid to see it. Whether it's a flop or not, on the 27th, Deadline Hollywood reported that Warner Brothers is interested in making a fifth outing, and they want Lana Wachowski to return as the director, which is good news for me as we get another trip down the rabbit hole and see what is really real. Peace and long life, Dean Mikitich. I have to say, I really enjoyed The Matrix Resurrections as well. Now, I've watched the Drinkers video. I've watched Just Some Guy's video. I've watched a lot of some of my favorite YouTubers opine on the movie, and a lot of them, for the most part, did not like it. I very much enjoyed it. I found it different and interesting. I wasn't necessarily looking for... I didn't know what I was looking for. I found it more a curiosity than anything else, and it was kind of something I never thought I would see again, and the fact that Carrie-Anne Moss came back and Keanu Reeves came back. I mean, here's the thing. You know, what I really liked about the film is at the end of the day, the one wasn't Neo or Trinity. The one was the unity of the two of them together. I thought that was fascinating. I thought, especially in this time, in this day and age where we are America, the American psyche has been systematically taken apart by both bad actors, foreign and domestic, Anybody that can, through the use of social media and other things, we're the big boys on the block. And America is now subject to, we have multiple realities in this country. People live in different realities. And that's what I thought The Matrix Resurrections was about. Now, did it impart that message in the most dynamic way possible? No. But I found it interesting. And I didn't think it was a great movie, but I thought it was a good movie. And I've now watched it 3 times. And it's fascinating. I think it has a lot to say. I think it's being much maligned because people expect something more, or they expect something different from their Matrix movies. I enjoyed it. I felt that now that I've seen it 3 times, I will buy the physical media, if only because I want to get more of the background on. I hope the Matrix, the first Matrix movies, all 3 of them had great special features. I'd love to have some real insight. I know that Lana Wachowski completely changed her approach to directing. She's explained, and she will explain. You'll see more explanations on this apparently on the making of stuff. That'll be on the 4K or the Blu-ray. She learned with Sense8, she moved into a very free-flowing improv style of directing. With the Matrix, the first Matrix especially, every shot was meticulously planned out. And when you're doing that, it doesn't give you a lot of room to breathe. There's a lot of creative freedom when you're not locked into these images that you've created before you got on set. And because of her experience directing Sense8, she really liked more of the improvisational jazz of directing the film, which means you can't, the kind of action that we saw in The Matrix had to be pre-planned. So, I don't know. I think The Matrix is going to be discussed and debated for a long time to come. There's people that really hate it, and there's people such as myself. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. And in terms of movies, I don't expect every movie that I see to be the greatest film in the world. But if I enjoyed watching it, well, then it's done its job. I've been entertained by it. I thought there was a lot in it that made me intrigued, and I certainly enjoyed watching it. I loved seeing it on the big screen. This next one comes from Ruben Hilbers. Hello, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. It's been a while since I've written in, but episode 776 of Robservations gave me an inspiration. Your rant was right on the money, but I feel that there is one issue with modern Star Trek that should be emphasized, and people already noticed that in the chat. Namely, that by blatantly tying them into politics that are current in the year that the season is released, the show will age extremely poorly. Oh, I completely agree with this. Sure, previous Trek shows have aged as well, but this is more technical aging, effects and such. The stories themselves, however, still hold up. Something that Kurtzman and Abrams don't understand. Cough! Mugatu, cough! This will not be the case for Kurtzman Trek, which will end up aging like Donovan at the end of The Last Crusade. Nice reference. You can have all the fancy effects in the world, but if the stories are no good, it won't help in the end. Like the knight said, he chose poorly. Regards, Ruben Hilbers. Well, Ruben, I'm with you 100% on that. Yeah, I think that, first of all, the idea that you're setting a story in the 32nd century and you're trying to make it modern by filling the show with modern politicking or modern identity politics is, first of all, incredibly short-sighted. If you're going to take your show into the future, your first job, if you're going to make here's a lesson for all of you writers out there. If you're going to take your show 1,000 years into the future, the first question you should ask yourself is, where would humanity be? Where would humanity be from today 1,000 years in the future? Let's extrapolate where we're going to be. And I'll tell you where your answer shouldn't be. That, our warp nacelles are not going to be connected to our starships. Don't do that, because that's not something that fucking matters. You know what? We had sailing ships 1,000 years ago. We have sailing ships today. Let your ships, that's not something. Let those exist. Let's those, think about traveling around the cosmos. I don't care what kind of technology that you have, but traveling the cosmos ain't going to be much different 1,000 years from now, depending whether we have faster than light travel or not. Detaching your warp nacelles just makes it more difficult for a company like Eagle Moss to make models of your ships. No, you have to ask yourself, all right, where are we as human beings now in 2021? What is available to us? And where would we be 1,000 years from now? I'll tell you where we're not going to be. No one's going to be complaining about their fucking pronouns. They're not. 1,000 years from now, all of those issues will be long since sorted. We would be a multi-species race where you have human beings marrying alien races. Do you think anyone's going to be talking about pronouns? They're not. And that to me is an unbelievable failure of imagination. Humanity, we might be living 1,000 years. What if 1,000 years from now, human beings, because of advanced medical technology, biotechnology, our lifespans were increased by 1,000 years? That's what I would have done. And when human beings can live to be 1,000 years old, how does that change the human experience? What if you could become a parent and you could hold that off until you were 300 years old? How would that change relationships? Already, by doing that one change, saying that human beings can live to be 1,000 years old now, how would that change your storytelling? I don't know. I'm not a writer on Star Trek. I'm not a writer on a show where this has become a thing. But I've seen and read other science fiction novels where people can live that long. Hell, I've read vampire novels where vampires live that long. How would that change humanity? There is a fundamental, horrible failure of imagination in modern Star Trek because they've gone to the 32nd century and they're mired in today. Because the people that are writing Star Trek now have very little imagination. And that's the problem with the show. They're cannibalizing. Every episode is a cannibalization of another idea. And that's too bad. Ruben, right there with you, buddy. Thanks for the letter. This next one comes from Laser Beam Hawkins. Laser Beam Hawkins writes, longtime subscriber. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Although I shouldn't say sir. Who knows? Laser Beam is not gender specific. So let's just call you Laser Beam. Longtime subscriber. I enjoyed your Star Trek rant the other day, and I'm extremely grateful of your in-depth knowledge of the Star Trek universe, as I'm always learning something new I missed from the real Star Trek series I grew up with. The part of your Robservations when you brought up how movie trailers give away the entire movie now is something that has been coming up again and again whenever I see a new trailer. The first time I really noticed a movie trailer ruining what could have been a great plot twist of the film was in Terminator 2. It's obvious when watching the movie that up until the T-1000 tries to kill John Connor the first time he sees him, that the viewer is meant to think that Arnold is supposed to be the bad guy again. The trailer went out of its way to give the entire plot away. Sure, Terminator 2 is one of the greatest, if not the greatest action film of the 90s, but think how much it would have enhanced the film if none of us knew going in that Arnold was the good guy. By contrast, another great action movie did exactly that, and I feel that's the reason it was amazing. That other film is The Matrix. The original trailer didn't give away the whole plot and put forth the question, what is The Matrix? As the trailer tagline, even letting the viewer know, no one can tell you what The Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. No matter how you feel about the subsequent sequels, the original Matrix has that special feel about it. I just remember my friend and I being blown away after seeing that in the theater for the first time, as was I. Knew nothing about it. It was completely original and became an instant classic for me, 100%. I'm sure the trailers ruining movie plots didn't begin with Terminator 2, and I would like to hear your earliest experience with this type of buzzkill. Laser Beam Hawkins. Well, I have to tell you, I don't know if I can remember, but it used to be that trailers didn't ruin the movie. They would intrigue you and they would tell you things, but you didn't really know the big plot twist. I mean, the way Terminator 2 is shot, when the T-800 shows up to rescue John Connor from the T-1000, you think he's going to kill him. And you're absolutely right. But they had to tell you, nope, this time Arnold's back and he's a good guy. I think there is a false sense that, the Terminator became huge on cable and home video. It did okay in the theaters too. It was a minor hit, but it really was one of those movies that became huge on home video. People were going to go see Terminator 2 if you remember, one of the first trailers was just it was showing Terminators being forged, and it was something they shot specifically for the movie, and it was really cool. That was a teaser trailer, just to let people know it was there. I think that there is a belief, and I think that belief is wrong now, that audiences are dumb, and audiences that want to see a movie like Terminator 2 would have to be told more about the film. Look, in my mind, I like trailers. I'll tell you, two of my favorite trailers of all time are the original trailer for Alien, which they emulated for Aliens, which starts out with they had a teaser trailer with the egg cracking, and that's all that was in the trailer. But they incorporated that. I mean, that was the teaser. But then in the trailer, they incorporated the brownies. That's a plate of brownies that they have. That's actually on the movie poster as well. The artwork that says "In space, no one can hear you scream." That trailer was great. And another great trailer that I think did its job was a trailer for Tim Burton's original Batman. And I'm not sure which version of the trailer it is, but it opens with the Batwing crashing. And all it is it seems random, but random shots and scenes from the movie that are not necessarily put together in a coherent manner. You just watch it and you go, oh my God, I have to see that. Like when Jerry Hall goes, "You look fine," and as she's looking at Jack Napier, and Jack turns and looks at her and goes, "I didn't ask." And it's just a collection of, and I can't, when I first saw that trailer, and that was I think that might be the regular trailer. All I know is it begins with the Batwing crashing, so you'll know that that's the right trailer. You watch this trailer, it doesn't tell you anything about the plot other than Joker and Batman are in it, and it's fucking great. You watch that trailer and you're like, man, that is how trailers should be. But no, they have to tell you everything. They have to, basically, trailers today encapsulate the whole movie. It's like you're watching the Reader's Digest condensed version of trailers. Mostly because there are very few people now that are working in marketing departments that have any idea how to innovate. There is no innovation happening amongst the marketing departments in Hollywood, and it's kind of a bummer. But what can you say? But Laserbeam Hawkins, I am with you 100%. And we'll see. I mean, nowadays, I'm fascinated by Netflix trailers, and we see so few of them. They're all out there, but there's so few of them. They do them for their movies, but I'm like, who's making these trailers? And they're not playing in theaters, which I think is interesting. But anyway, I'm surprised we haven't seen trailers for more Netflix shows in movie theaters. I don't know why they don't do that, but whatever. This next one comes from C.J. Jones. Hello, Rob. I watched your Robservations episode 776 on modern Star Trek. Oh, wait a minute. Did I just read that one? I must have just read that. Oh, no. This is a different letter. It just starts out the same way. C.J. Jones says, hello, Rob. I watched your Robservations episode 776 on modern Star Trek. I remember in past videos you would mention not liking the newer Star Treks. I always wondered, what was it about them you didn't like? And in this video, you hit the nail on the head. I like how you noticed that modern Treks were about people feeling represented in order to feel enjoyment or relate. I see this in a lot of modern TV shows and movies. They feel this need to have representation for people's gender, sexual preference, or political views. As a kid, watching movies and TV shows, I used to love the heroes. Not because they were my skin color or felt the same attraction to in the broad sense of the movie. I always felt like every movie or TV show allowed me to see heroes and learn something about myself. They gave me a sense of what characteristic a hero embodied. The courage and fight to see things through to the end for the betterment of others or their society. I remember seeing Terminator for the first time, and I remember Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor fighting to stop this machine at all costs. I didn't care that she was a female. I didn't need Arnold Schwarzenegger to be the hero. Yet I learned something from her fighting spirit. I remember seeing Sigourney Weaver as Ripley doing the same thing at all costs. And yet, I can just still justify as easily enjoying Arnold Schwarzenegger kicking ass in Predator as Dutch. I used to enjoy going to the movies and wondering what I was going to learn about myself. What character traits could I learn to desire to add to my list of what made a hero, for example? I used to enjoy going and watching Star Trek like you because I was learning things. Nowadays, I worry when I watch something. I'm going to have something shoved down my throat with some political idea or argument, or way I should think, that to think contrary to those ideas or to have a different political view means that person is evil or hateful or phobic. I liked Star Trek for being this idea of what humanity could be, that the human race could aspire to being more than just a bunch of people who solely care about their own self-interests and not something bigger and larger than themselves. Movies that are about representation just introduce us to the new villains we're rooting for, and they're not giving us heroes. The heroes of old were men and women, regardless of color, who cared about the bigger picture. To quote Spock in Kirk's conversation, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. That's not true with today's Star Trek shows. Well, and many movies and shows, honestly. Today it's all about the needs of the one, not a humanity that could aspire to be something better. You're right, the newer Star Trek shows humanity declining, regressing back into what it once was, or rather more like us now. I know when looking back historically, we are better than we've ever been when it comes to humanity at large. I just wish we had movies and TV shows that gave us a world we could aspire to want to become, not just focus on singular topics like gender, sexual orientation, or politics. Thanks for reading that review and sharing your thoughts on what Star Trek means. It really struck a chord with me and reminded me of why I loved movies growing up, yet feel that they've lost something over time. CJ. Well, CJ, great letter. Thanks for writing in. You know, I do read the comments that people put on the videos. I like reading comments. So if you don't want to write a letter in, but you just want to type off a couple of sentences or something, put them in the comments. I'll read those as well. Somebody left in the comments section on that video. They said that, well, you just like these kinds of movies because you grew up in a world seeing yourself represented on screen. Now, on one hand, that's true. I mean, I grew up as a white male in the United States. I grew up as a lot of white men were represented on screen. But here's the thing. When I grew up watching movies from around the world. I grew up watching a lot of Asian science fiction, a lot of Asian kung fu films, of which there are no white people in them because they're all Asians. That's one of the reasons I found them appealing. You know, there is a sensibility that was contained in those movies that is certainly not Western. And that's why I liked them. I was like, this is interesting. You know, even watching samurai movies. We don't have samurai movies in the West. I would love Kurosawa movies, and it was really interesting to learn about the Code of the Bushido or watching how a police investigation went in Kurosawa's High and Low. Now, whenever I mention this, people are like, well, Rob, you know, you're unique. Not everybody's watching these things. And my answer is that, no, I don't think I'm unique. There are cultures in the world that have been making cinema since the dawn of cinema. Post-war Japanese cinema is quite vibrant, and they didn't just make Godzilla movies. Watch some Ozu. Watch Woman in the Dunes. There's a lot of great Japanese movies out there. The last 20 years, the Koreans have been crushing it. The Korean film industry and television industry has been doing some great stuff. I mean, Squid Game is not the first TV show they've made, trust me. Chinese cinema. We've had a resurgence or a growing Indonesian cinema. Anybody who's watched Bollywood cinema has been around for a very long time. I can't help but think a lot of the representation and all of this talk about politics and all that, I mean, I see it more as an American issue because I think that Americans are grappling with a lot of things, especially over the last 20 years, that has been as a result of, say, social media, things like that. And I'm like, it isn't my fault that you haven't been watching world cinema. And when you're talking about representation, again, people want to see themselves. But I'm like, there's a huge world out there. There's a lot of cinema. I grew up in the 80s going to the Seattle International Film Festival, which had an emphasis on Pacific Rim cinema. But I saw movies from all over the world. I would sit there for the month of May. I think the 10th Seattle International Film Festival in 1985, I think I saw 200 movies from around the world in 1 month in 85. This idea that we all have to see ourselves represented on the screen is odd to me. I grew up watching all kinds of people on the screen. my movie collection is filled with movies made by all different kinds of people. And that's what the world cinema is. It's like only reading books about Americans and saying, I don't see myself represented in these books that I'm reading, even though there's an entire planet of books that exist. It's bizarre. And I understand where it is. And maybe it's true that I grew up in a world seeing myself represented. But, I would go out of my way to see stories that I wasn't represented in. Because, like you said in your letter, I would like to see and learn from movies and television. And from a very early age, even as a little kid, I loved watching Asian martial arts movies, Asian fantasy films, Asian science fiction. That's what I saw the most of, because in Seattle, there was a lot of access to that kind of material. So, as opposed to, there wasn't a lot of Bollywood films airing on Seattle local stations when I was growing up. But I wish there were, because I would have liked to have watched those as well. And I think this idea that everyone wants to see themselves on screen, is that such a good thing? Maybe. We're getting more representation all the time. And as I've said, the more voices that get to speak, the more voices that get to tell their stories, the more diverse stories that we can tell. Hey, I think that's all great. But as long as they're not compromising the stories themselves, because diversity and representation are important, but the stories that have diversity and representation in them are more important. The storytelling, the truth of those stories is the most important thing. And if you're telling stories that are only about diversity and only about representation, you're not doing anyone any favors. It's the great stories that impart the message, not the message that creates great stories. So, just a thought. I could be wrong. That's up for you to tell me. Let's see what you guys are saying. Julius Goodwin, the official sommelier of this channel. Julius says, I enjoyed Spider-Man No Way Home, but I have to admit, due to the leaks, it felt a bit anticlimactic. Just a theory on my part, but I honestly feel that a lot of those leaks came from all those new and rather useless executives Chapek put in place. Well, you could be right, Julius. It's unfortunate that these leaks happen. I wouldn't have told anybody about anyone in this movie, because it would have been amazing to not know any of this. Keep it all as rumor. And then when the movie breaks, then people go in and people would be... Can you imagine if we didn't know even about the villains? This movie would have been like, oh my God, it would have hit the world like a bomb, even if it would have started slow. It would have... I bet it would have even made even more money. It would have caused a stampede, because people would have been so... It would have been so amazing that the press, like, how do they keep it all a secret? It could have been really, really good. Thanks, by the way, for supporting the channel, and thanks for the year of support you've given Elizabeth and I. Very much appreciated, sir. One day, I hope to get out there and return the favor. Tomfoolery Skullduggery sends in a tip and says, pre-ordering Hot Toys Thena by chance? Guilty as charged. Of course, can't wait. Prototype looks gorgeous, hoping the final product is spot on. Well, we'll know in fall of 2023? Tomfoolery Skullduggery is talking about the Hot Toys Thena, the Angelina Jolie member of the Eternals, that went up for sale this week, pre-sale, but it doesn't come out until until third quarter of 2023. But yeah, I did pre-order that. Hoping the final product is spot on. Hope to see Cersei or Makari next. Rarely happens, but Hot Toys reissued the Dark Knight Catwoman. Finally, we'll be able to get one of my Grail figures I missed. See you next year. Well, Tomfoolery, I actually have that Catwoman figure, and they made the new one. Obviously, they always improve them. I always love that figure. It's great. The Anne Hathaway head sculpt was spot on. The outfit was great, and I've had her sitting on my bat pod since I had her. So yeah. Justin Toner, hello, our own very own Justin Toner, sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, I was on a 4-hour drive back home from visiting family for Christmas during Let's Get Physical Media, but listened while driving. Good lists from you and Dieter. You see the list of extras for the Ghostbusters Ultimate box set? I'm all in on it. Yeah, it looks great, and you can't not buy it when it comes in the Ghost Trap. Come on now. Looks great. I can't wait. Can't wait. Darth Plato sends in a tip and says, I like the Fett show. Consider it, detailed display of a foreign culture in a fantasy setting is about as fantasy gets. A developed setting is an essential element of fantasy, but by no means the only element. The rest, I'm sure, are soon to come. Hey, I agree, man. I mean, yeah, does it kind of bum me out that we're back on Tatooine yet again? I get it. Kind of does. I mean, but hey, we're outside of Mos Espa. I like dealing with Jabba the Hutt. I thought it was pretty good. You know, I can't complain. I thoroughly enjoyed the show. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We'll see where it goes. But you're right. Jeff Yerke and Mrs. Yerke, the most romantic man on this channel. Jeff says, "Hi, Bob," he said, channeling For All Mankind. "Happy New Year to you, your loved ones, and the entire Post-Geek Singularity. Wishing everyone all the best for a Star Trek-free 2022. Live long and prosper, the Yerk Man." Well, you know we all have to tune in and watch Picard and Strange New Worlds. What would I do? I mean, it keeps me going, keeps me fighting. The good fight. So I can't stay Trek-free. RRTNZ, our friend in New Zealand, sends in a super chat and says, "Hail Bob! Random Wachowski question. What are your thoughts on Speed Racer? In my humble opinion, an underrated and misunderstood sports fable, a solid hero's journey. I love Speed Racer. First of all, it's funny. When I worked for Silver Pictures, I was a script reader. I started reading screenplays for Joel Silver back in 1990. And they were developing a Speed Racer movie even back then. And I read, this is long before the Wachowskis had written Assassins or made Bound or anything like that. And I read a bunch of different Speed Racer movies, and they were all very Days of Thunder-esque. It was like they tried to set Speed Racer in the real world. And I'm like, bro, you got to have the car acrobatic team. You've got to have the mammoth car. You've got to have races through volcanoes. I mean, no one got it. No one understood what Speed Racer was. And I think that the Speed Racer movie, like you said, it's a great sports fable. You know, I've never heard anyone quite describe it that way, but that's exactly what it is. I mean, it deals with sponsorships. It deals with responsibility. You've also got the brothers. I mean, it's got ninjas in it. It's exactly the Speed Racer movie I was hoping for. The only thing is I really wanted the car acrobatic team to be a bunch of Satan worshipers, you know? But they weren't. I would like to see that. But I love Speed Racer. I hope that they release the disc in 4K and that we have uncompressed sound. I've been told maybe that could possibly happen. Who knows? I love Speed Racer. I think it's wonderful. I love no other movie looks like that. It's fantastic. To me, the only other thing that comes close is if you go back and you look at Tron. Tron was... it doesn't look like any other movie, nor does Speed Racer. I know some people can't stand it. Love Speed Racer. Love it, love it, love it. 200 Watt Studios sends in a super chat and says, "Wonderful to see two writers that wanted to tell a great story in No Way Home. Rare. Tamora Morrison has no presence or gravitas. Rodriguez is overrated." Well, that's two different things. Yes, it was great to see those writers in talking about that, but 200 Watt Studio, Tamora Morrison, I think he does have a little bit of presence and gravitas. I just think that the way, I have to say, I thought that the direction in the first episode of Book of Boba Fett was really, and the editing. I mean, first of all, I got to tell you, that scene where he's digging in the sand was absurd. That was an absurd scene, and it slowed to a crawl. I mean, he's literally just like, it was so half-assed. I'm like, what the hell, man? Was that only because that the studio only had that much sand on the floor? It was really, yeah. I thought the direction was a bit lackluster, to be honest. Emil Johansson sends in a super chat and says, "The Last Jedi is the best in the trilogy." To be honest, I'd have to tell you, Emil, that I agree with you. It was the only, even though I think there's so much ridiculous stuff, the slow chase, the craziness. It's got there's a lot of goofy stuff in Last Jedi, and it could be fixed, I think, but it's goofy. But compared to Rise of Skywalker, which is one of the biggest train wrecks I've ever seen in the history of cinema, and I'm not a fan of Force Awakens, so. Superhero Display sends in a super chat and says, Sir RMB, to you and all the Post-Geek Singularity, Happy New Year. Well, I'm going to be back tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a show tomorrow. But Happy New Year to you too, sir. Sheriff Carl is back. He's tipping me 666. All right. Hope all is groovy, my dude. It's a wintry paradise here in Seattle, and I'm about to take shrooms with my bandmates. Dude, when it's snowing, taking shrooms with your bandmates is the best. Let's let our imaginations run amok. I recommend you check out the book, The Cosmic Serpent. Kind of nonfiction sci-fi. Have a medal 2022. We will. Thank you for that, Sheriff Carl. Don't have too many mushrooms. I don't want you to get sick. Just a Brown Girl. Hello, Just a Brown Girl. Just a Brown Girl Network sends in a super chat and says, I've got a PGA screener for Tick Tick Boom, New Year's Eve viewing, New York Day, gonna marathon Belfast, Cyrano, and the Tender Bar. I love screener season. Yeah, I got to get in on that. I really want to see the Tender Bar. I'm very, very excited to see the Tender Bar. A lot. SpongeBob Square Balls sends in a super chat and says, I think one of the best future imaginations was the TV show Futurama. They knew how people are still crazy despite all of the advancements. It's true. You know what? That is a very apt observation. I agree with you. And by the way, Just a Brown Girl, it was very nice to get to know you this year and to actually go places with you. We must do that a lot next year, too. Let's do some work. Sends in a tip. Thank you. By the way, I just started watching. Sent me a video to watch. As a matter of fact, I was halfway through it, and I'm going to put it in the chat because it's absolutely fascinating. Says, check this video out, and I'm going to put it in the live chat because it's really good. And let me find it. Here it is. And it's a speech being given by a guy named Neil Oliver, the attack on our history and culture, and it is fascinating. And I recommend it. It's like an hour long, but it's worth reading. So here you go. I put it. I'm worth reading. It's not reading. You can watch it. It's worth watching. That's what I meant to say. Although I'm only a half an hour into it, but I'm passing it along anyway because it's that good. So thank you. Fortunato sends in a super chat and says, Yo, Notorious RMB. What happened at the film festival? Just curious. Well, it ended. I just haven't given out the awards. We announced the semifinalists, and perhaps that'll be something that's coming in the new year. Ooh, in this soon, by the way. We have cash prizes and we have statues to award. Aiken sends in a super chat and says, I identify with the character, not the character's appearance. Impossible Journey, Littlest Hobo, Lassie, to name just a few characters I don't resemble. Aiken, touche, sir, touche. I appreciate that. Will Miller became a member. Victor Rosario from Maine, all the way down in Puerto Rico, continued his membership. Thank you for that. By the way, we're going to have a lot more member stuff. Our member chats are going to continue. There isn't one this weekend. There's one next weekend. I love the member chats, but I'm going to start doing little videos, little review videos and things that are going to be members only before they go live. So just to talk about books and things, just short stuff that people keep asking me about, which I think will be fun. Melvin Deeply says that Neil Oliver is an idiot. Everyone in Scotland hates him. Well, I do think, Melvin, that the video is good. I don't know who he is. So maybe that's it. I don't have any preconceived notions about Neil Oliver, so I like the video. But I still stand by it. I thought it was really interesting. Why does everybody hate him? Michael Preston says, Hey, Rob, Happy New Year. Do you think the Star Wars movie universe is dead now that they canceled Rogue Squadron and High Republic? Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, I think there's going to be a lot to see. I mean, I do think that this reliance on stuff that's happened before is unfortunate. Look, I think that Obi-Wan Kenobi series could be really cool. I'm hoping Boba Fett will be really cool. Now that we've seen Mandalorian and now a second series made with the stagecraft technology, I think that stagecraft technology is hampering the way these shows are made. That's just a thought. We'll have to see. But I don't know if that's the case yet. But what can I do? Tom Jr. Jackson says, release the PGS All-Stars. Yes, I have more to release, Tom. I got to put those out, and I will. So there you go. And on that note, everyone, Ricky B says, for Willow, I hope everything is okay for your parents. This is Willow Yang. For Willow, I hope everything is okay for your parents. The news about happenings in Hong Kong is worrisome. It is indeed. I think Willow's parents are actually in Canada, but I don't know. But yes, what's going on in Hong Kong, the clampdowns and the stuff that's happening. I mean, communist China is an authoritarian regime. They'll do anything they can to clamp down on the people under there. They're oppressive, and they want to control the way people think and communicate, and it's unfortunate. And what's going on should be resisted with every fiber of the free world's being, and I hope it will be. So we shall see. Superhero Displays sends in a tip and says, as I said before, I can't get any display cases to you as my company is no more. That's okay, but you gave it a college try. However, I still want to send you something to thank you for helping me re-engage with childhood during a very dark period, and I will. So I have an idea. What are your Hot Toys grails as far as I can remember? It was characters from Ragnarok, or is that still the case? Well, yeah, it is. I didn't get any Rogue One figures, and I didn't get any Ragnarok figures. It was at a time when money was tight. So any figures from Rogue One or Ragnarok are figures I'm looking for. So if you can put me in the direction, those things would be great. So yeah, I appreciate that. But you don't have to do that. Just be a vibrant member of the community. But I appreciate the thought. And I'm sorry that the company went down during the pandemic, because I was looking forward to seeing what you came up with. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, however you identify across the 28 known galaxies. Why? I don't know. I say that because that's from Superman the movie. I just like saying it because it's a nerdy thing to say. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank my moderating staff. Good ones today. Well, look at what we've got. We got Darren Seeley, Lord Tarth, which is great. We've got Louise X. Sparrow, Justin Toner. I don't know if Joshua Levesque is here, but I love my moderators. They do a fine job. Please give them my best and your best. So, yeah. And on that note, I want to say thanks to everybody who supports the channel via Super Chats and tips. Most appreciated. And people who become members. We'll be doing more with the members next year. And I can't believe tomorrow is the last day of Season 3 of Robservations. We begin Season 4. I'm wondering if I should change my opening. The music I can't change, but I was thinking about changing the video somehow. I don't know how. Maybe I will. I don't know. But on that note, I would say to all of you, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to all of you, have a better day. And I do mean that sincerely.